This is Ken Rockwell with KenRockwell.com and KenRockwell.tv. Here's a quick user's guide to some pro secrets behind the Fujifilm X-E3. Now, I'm not going to cover everything about this camera because that could take 3 hours, and I'm not going to cover basic photography, which could take a lifetime. What I'm going to cover are the basic weirdnesses that no one ever tells you so you can get this camera to work the way it needs to go. Let's start at the top. Power and charging. Well, the battery goes in here. No secrets to that. The only secret is sometimes it will go in screwy, and it won't go in all the way, and you'll be like, oh my gosh, it won't go in. Look for this orange dot and that orange dot, or maybe the gold terminals, your choice. In it goes. The cards are tough to get. I'm sorry, I didn't design the camera. Okay, to charge it, the simplest way is any cheap 99-cent micro USB cord goes right in there, plugs into any USB source. It could be a solar cell, it could be a power pack, one of those little power banks, it could be your laptop, it could be anything you like, that'll charge. You can also use the included charger, you don't need to. When it does charge, it shows a green LED on the back, and when it's done charging, the green LED goes out. To get the battery percentage to display, it's nearly impossible to figure out, but to get the battery percentage, turn the camera on, tap this to get into the shooting mode, tap the display button a few times, and the only place you can get the actual percentage as opposed to an icon is in this data screen, only on the rear LCD. It won't work through the viewfinder, and then you'll get your battery percentage right up there at the top. There's an auto lever. This little lever here, if you have this down in the auto position, all the things I'm going to talk about in this video won't work. So make sure to push it forward to the totally unmarked position, which unlocks your ability to set the camera. Focus modes. Here's your focus mode switch. It's not a menu. That's one of the many beauties of the Fujifilm cameras. It's manual, autofocus continuous, that's C, and autofocus single. In manual, well, it's manual focus. C, continuous, it focuses continuously. Single means it focuses once and locks. And the beauty of it is, while you're shooting, you can just grab that with your finger, and by feel, you should learn which one's auto, which one's manual, and you're all set. It's so much better than any other DSLR or any other mirrorless, which doesn't have a dedicated switch. Exposure modes. There is no mode button. There is no mode dial. How do we set program auto, aperture priority? Well, it's actually very simple. It's just like the Contax cameras had been back in the 35mm medium format days. The shutter dial is very clear. You set your shutter speed. If you set your shutter speed, that means you're either going to be in manual or you're going to be in shutter priority, depending on how you set your lens. In other words, you can tell the camera what shutter speed you'd like to use, or tell it to pick the shutter speed for itself. Now, setting the apertures, every lens is different. This particular lens, if you set it here, turning this sets your aperture, then you're in aperture priority. And if you set it to A, then the aperture is set automatically. And depending on the 4 combinations of choosing a manual aperture or a manual shutter speed or setting either one or both to automatic is how you get your exposure modes. Program, set both of them to automatic. Shutter priority, set the aperture to automatic and choose the shutter speed. For shutter priority, choose an aperture and set the shutter dial to automatic. And for manual, just set them manually. It sounds confusing. It's really simple. That means when I'm out shooting and I suddenly want a particular aperture, without even taking my eye from the frame, I move that switch, choose my aperture, everything goes from program into aperture priority. If I suddenly want a specific manual shutter speed or shutter priority, I simply grab this little dial without taking my eye from the finder. I love it. I prefer the Fujifilm exposure control system. The shutter dial is weird. Here's how to make the shutter dial go. As I said, if you set it to A, the camera will pick the correct exposure time, and these are all manual speeds. 180x, you probably haven't seen that before, except maybe on a Leica. That is the flash sync speed. If you're shooting nothing but flash at that flash sync speed, that'll lock it into the flash sync. We get down to 1 second. Time is not really time. That's Japanese-lish, meaning that you can now set in the T mode, you can set it electronically with the mode dial the way all the other cameras do. The rear dial is usually the shutter speed. The maximum can go to 32,000 if you're in the electronic mode. And the beauty of it is you can go all the way down well past 30 seconds. I love this feature because I'm oftentimes shooting time exposures. You can get all the way to 15 minutes. I love that. Bulb is a conventional bulb exposure. For flash, flash is a bummer. Fujifilm makes it really difficult when the camera doesn't feel like shooting flash. It'll just give you a dumb look and it won't tell you why or what the problem is. If you have any of these modes turned on, you can't get flash and it won't tell you. If you're not getting the flash to fire, this happens to me, it drives me up the wall. you, number one, only can be in a mechanical shutter mode. If you're in electronic shutter mode, the flash won't fire. If you have the anti-flicker mode turned on, you can't get the flash to fire. If you have an advanced mode other than S for single shot, the flash won't fire. You have to check all these things because unless you have all of them set, not in those settings, the flash won't go and the camera won't tell you what the problem is. When you use the flash, at least this included flash, the results in auto white balance are a little bit warmer typically taken outdoors because it's assuming the flash to be rather cool. I actually like the way that looks with the flash. So outdoors, I almost always use the flash for fill flash, but it gives me the additional advantage of tending to give me a warmer look. To set the flash modes, to slow sync and so forth, it's very confusing and well hidden. The way you do that is you press Menu, go to Flash, Flash Bolt, Flash Function Setting, it's hidden under Sync. Tap this little forward-way nubbin in, and then you can select first or curtain for that. Same thing for TTL versus manual. If you'd like to have the image you just shot pop up every time you shoot, go to Menu, go to Wrench, go to Screen Setup, then Image Display. Continuous means the previously shot image stays up until you tap the shutter again or a preset amount of time. If you want the level display, you have to enable that, as well as a lot of the other things that you see through the Finder. To do that, press Menu, go to Wrench, go to Screen Setup. Again, feel free to play this back again because it's tough to remember. Display Custom Setting. And finally, all these 4 pages of options are things you may select or refuse to show up in your live view display. Things like battery levels, framing outlines. To program the touch LCD to perform the way you want it to perform, that is so complicated and so convoluted that I have a completely separate video showing you how to set that, and there's a link to that in the description. That's the basics of how to use the Fujifilm X-E3.